zameraný, ale zameraný na klienta. Je v tom rozdiel.
Client-centered psychotherapy has a very clear theory. Rogers was very clear about that. He's written about it. It's in the book. I hope you've had a look at least client-centered therapy.
Že terapia zameraná na klienta má veľmi jasnú teóriu. Rogers bol veľmi jasný v tom, ako ju formuloval, a teda dúfam, že ste čítali tú knižku. Je to všetko v tej knižke Terapia zameraná na klienta.
The person-centered approach has no theory. It's an approach. How can you have theory to an approach?
Ale prístup zameraný na človeka nemá žiadnu teóriu. Ako by mohol mať teóriu, je to prístup.
Nevertheless, though in practice I am a client-centered therapist, I try to be person-centered as often as I can. I don't always make it. My wife will tell you that. But it's,
Napríklad, že v praxi som teda terapeut zameraný na klienta, tak snažím sa byť aj čo najviac na človeka zameraný v tom svojom prístupe. Niekedy mi to ide viac, niekedy menej. Nie vždy, moja žena by vám mohla rozprávať.
I do the best I can.
Robím čo najlepšie.
Now I'd like to leave it with you chaps.
Teraz by som chcela odovzdať slovo vám.
Any questions you want to ask, I'll do the best to answer.
Máte nejaké otázky? Ak áno, čo najlepšie odpoviem.
Ja jednu mám úplne na začiatok, ak môžem. Keby si trošku stručne ľuďom, ktorí o tebe vlastne naozaj nič nevedia, sa len tak zľahka predstavil, okrem toho, čo si povedal, lebo to už je aj predstavenie.
I would just have one question at the beginning. If you could just briefly introduce yourself to people who might not know at all who you are, and also this, what you have said, is already part of the introduction.
Oh, okay. My name is David Buck.
Volám sa David Buck.
What else do you need? My education or something? I came here with a couple of Americans and a Frenchman in 1988, which was the year after Carl died.
Šiel som si s Američanom a Francúzom sem v roku 88, čo bolo rok potom, ako Karol zomrel.
Yeah, he was due to come here. It was all planned. That was our next trip. We were in I think Ireland the year before, but we had a couple of workshops in Szeged in Hungary.
Bolo to naplánované, Karol mal prísť, mal to byť naša ďalšia cesta, predtým sme boli v Írsku a v Maďarsku.
Yeah, one of the things we wanted to do was to offer and expand client-centered therapy, but no, Carl would kill me, the person-centered approach.
Na človeka zameraný prístup.
And we came here in 1988.
My prišli v tom 88.
And we had a very big workshop somewhere. Ivan will know, in Pezinov. Was it Pezinov or somewhere like that?
Mali sme veľké workshopy, Ivan si bude pamätať, myslím, že v Pezinku.
You can imagine it was very difficult to get that workshop under the political circumstances, but people worked and they did it and we got it, and it was very strange. I'll tell you what happened, something funny there. In the evening we were... Sorry.
Môžete si predstaviť, že v čase aj kvôli politickej situácii náročné prísť a urobiť taký veľký workshop, ale ľudia mali záujem, posnažili sa to podarilo a bolo to veľmi zvláštne a poviem vám o tom príbeh.
You know what it's like in these evening workshops? You relax, you have a few drinks and people tell jokes and things.
Viete, ako to je na tých workshopoch, už na večer dáme si do pár drinkov, niečo popijeme, rozprávame sa.
And I was in this group in the evening because we kind of split, wanted to meet people.
Bol som v tej skupinke, tak na večer, tam boli sme rôzne rozdelení a chcel som.
And I told this anti-American joke.
Povedal som jeden taký antiamerický vtip.
Nothing malicious, but it was sort of, you know.
Hrozné, ale bolo to.
And people laughed, blah, blah, blah.
Ja sa na to
When I got, this will kill. When I got back to England, I received an invitation from the University of Leningrad. Would I like to go and work there? So that showed how many of these sort of people were in the group.
Prišla pozvánka z Leningradu, z univerzity, či by som nechcel ísť tam pre nich pracovať. Takže to tak ukazuje, že koľko takýchto ľudí tam bolo vlastne.
That's absolutely true.
Je to úplne pravda.
But the beauty of all of this was we managed to expand the work of Rogers and share it with so many people. And here's one of the results right in this room right now. And various workshops across Slovakia and Czechoslovakia.
A to, čo bolo na tom krásne, je, že nám podarilo vlastne rozšíriť tú prácu Karla Rogersa. Myslím si,
Along
že
with
to,
my, I'm sorry.
a to, ako tu sedíme, je vlastne toho výsledkom a vlastne sme robili rôzne podujatia na Slovensku a Československu.
Yeah, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to take your time.
Nechcem hovoriť, že som vám neminul čas.
Okay. Along with my partner and Tegzi,
spolu s mojím
we
partnerom
founded a group in Brno, and at the same time, what was his Ivan? What's his name? We did it here.
Ako sa volá ten druhý?
Levenka. Founded a group here.
Súčasne teda Vlado
And there were
Hlavenka.
two very strong groups in client-centered psychotherapy, and I think still going strong.
Boli to veľmi silné skupiny na klienta zameranej terapii a vlastne doteraz pokračujú.
And one of the things Rogers wanted was to make an impact.
Jedna z vecí, ktorú Rogers chcel, je mať nejaký dopad.
Don't get away with the idea that he walked around like Jesus Christ.
Predstavujte si ho, že
He
sa
wanted to make an impact. He had
ako
an
Ježiš.
ego like everybody else.
Chcel mať nejaký dopad, mal ego ako každý iný človek.
And I'm going to finish with this one thing.
A
People
zakončím
have
to.
often asked me, Carl and I are so different personalities. He was pretty boring socially, quite frankly. Probably due to his earlier upbringing in seminaries and so on.
Zakončím to jednou takou vetou. Často sa ma pýtali, že ja a Karl, že sme veľmi odlišné osobnosti a Karl bol veľmi taký nudný v spoločnosti. Možno to bolo spôsobené tou jeho výchovou.
So why did I love him?
Tak prečo som ho mal tak rád?
Probably, and I've thought about this quite a lot, probably because he was how he wrote.
Pravdepodobne, a už som to viackrát spomínal, že on bol taký,
And
ako
you
aj
can
písal.
remember the people that you studied, the big psychologists. How many of them were the same as they wrote? I don't think very many. What you read about Carl, that's how he was.
A môžete si spomenúť na
That's what you got.
psychologov, ktorých ste sa učili, o ktorých ste čítali.
And that was the beauty of this man. Sorry. I did tell you to shut me up.
Pochybujem, že veľa z tých veľkých psychologov, ktorí písali a od ktorých ste študovali, že boli takí istí aj osobne, ako ste o nich čítali v knihe, ale Karl bol presne taký aj osobne, ako aj písal.
One, I think, something you may not know, the old Pope, the Polish guy, he read On Becoming a Person.
A možno jednu vec, ktorú neviete,
He was very impressed with this.
bývalý pápež
I hope
čítal
you've read it.
čítal
I see some people nodding.
stávaní sa človekom. Budete tam čítať.
So he invited Carl to the Vatican to meet with Rogers.
Takže pápež pozval Rogersa do Vatikánu na stretnutie.
And we were all in Italy at that time. So, you know, it was quite exciting for us that, you know, the holiness asked to come.
A všetci sme boli v tom čase, a bolo to veľmi vzrušujúce, že Poľsko si akoby pozvalo.
So two emissaries came to our hotel to meet with Carl to tell him, you know, I guess the setup.
Takže who? I'm sorry?
The arrangements.
Okay, čiže dvaja ľudia akoby za nejakú organizáciu prišli za Karlom do hotela, aby mu vysvetlili, ako veci budú prebiehať.
And they told Carl he was going to be in a group with 6 or 7 other people.
A povedali mu, že bude v skupine so 6 alebo 7 ďalšími ľuďmi.
And Roger said, I don't do group therapy anymore. He didn't go. As much as we said you should go, Carl, he said, no, I'm not going. The invitation was for me to meet with His Holiness the Pope, and they've cheated on that. I'm not going.
Tak bol človek, no. Mal svoje ego, ako povedal.
Otca prišiel a povedal, že nie, tak nešiel.
I'll just one more incident and then I'll hand it over to you guys. There was a big meeting in Brazil.
Stretnutie v Brazílii.
The idea of that meeting was to get diplomats together, introduce them to the person-centered approach in order for them to look at differently in ways in which we work for peace in the world.
Myšlienkou toho stretnutia bolo pozvať rôznych diplomatov, aby sa akoby vzdelávali v tom prístupe zameraného na človeka, aby videli rôzne spôsoby, akými môžeme...
This was his dream. It didn't work, and we know it's not work even now. But that was the purpose of it. And after that, Rogers was recommended to the Nobel Peace Prize.
A potom bol Rogers nominovaný alebo
He didn't get it.
Na Nobelovú
cenu. You know, to be recommended was something pretty special. And that year, it was won by Simon Wiesenthal, a Nazi chaser.
A teda nedostal ju, ale je pekné byť aj nominovaný na také niečo. A v tom roku to získal Wiesenthal, ktorý naháňal nacistov.
So that's a little bit about me, a little bit about my relationship with Rogers. Now, it's all yours.
Takže to je trošku o mne a vzťahu s Rogersom.
I'd love to hear from you.
Teraz čo vy? Chcel by som počuť niečo od vás.
Je to zaujímavá skúsenosť. Väčšinou robím tie rozhovory ja, takže teraz by som to nechal v tom encounter.
It's an interesting experience. Usually I conduct the interview, but today we can leave it as an encounter group.
Okay.
Tak si chcel, vieš?
Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Pravdepodobne nad niečím uvažujete. Aj vás sem niečo prilákalo.
You're probably thinking about something and you were attracted to this for a reason.
Sorry, what was the question?
No, Vlado is talking to the group.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
You are here for a reason, probably were attracted by this.
Tak aká bola tá cesta tej psychológie k tomu Rogerovi u ňoho?
Je cesta psychológie v zmysle?
Toho áno, ako spolupráci.
What was your path to working together with Rogers? How did you get to that?
Most of it was luck.
Väčšina toho bolo šťastie.
Really, being in the right place at the right time. Not by desire, but it happened.
Že som bol v správnom čase na správnom mieste a nie preto, že som to tak chcel a plánoval, ale sa to proste stalo.
I can't remember the date so well now, but I think it probably was in California at La Jolla. And I met him there personally. We talked on the phone And I brought him to London. Or invited him to London.
Už si veľmi pamätám dátum, ale myslím, že som stretol v Kalifornii, tam som ho stretol vlastne osobne, predtým sme si telefonovali. Stretli sme sa aj
at that time,
potom som ho priniesol do Londýna, teda respektíve pozval som ho do Londýna a v tom čase.
at that time I was working for the Inner London Education Authority. And I said to Carl, it'd be really great if you could come and address the authority. You know, it's pretty big, the Inner London, or it was. And he said yes.
Som v tom čase pracoval v školstve v Londýne a
And he did. He came along with John Wood. You've probably not heard of John Wood. He was very close. Yeah.
Takže pozval som Karla, aby prišiel sa tam porozprávať s tými ľuďmi a prišiel s Johnom Woodom.
And Chuck Devonshire. And we all met in the Inner London Education Authority.
A s Chuckom Devonshireom a spolu sme sa tam stretli na tom školskom.
Now, sometime after, he just finished a book, I can't remember which one now. But for some reason, he wrote a letter to me and said, thank you for inviting me. It was very, very nice and blah, blah, blah. I met these people. A very nice thank you letter.
Napísal list potom neskôr, aby mi poďakoval, vďaka, že si ma pozval, bolo to príjemné sa tam stretnúť s tými ľuďmi.
Yeah, and he's, don't hold me to the dates. And he wrote at the end, we're having a big workshop in Hungary. Would you like to join the staff?
A napísal mi, nechcete, aby som vedel, že...
I thought about it for a second.
Ale napísal mi...
When's the next plane? So something like that.
Napísal mi, že bude veľký workshop v Maďarsku a či nechcem prísť a byť súčasťou teda toho organizačného týmu a viesť spolu ten workshop. A ja som povedal, kedy je ďalšie lietadlo.
I think that was about 1983 or something like that.
Že to bolo okolo roku 83.
And then it became regular.
Potom už sme to zrobili pravidelne.
So I was in the right place at the right time, really.
Že bol som v správnom čase na správnom mieste.
And we went back to Hungary the following year. Then we went to Paris and so on, and right up until 86, which was in Dublin.
Prišli sme potom aj na ďalší rok do Maďarska a potom na ďalší do Paríža a tak ďalej, až do roku 86, kedy sme boli v Dubline.
Yeah, and then it was rather nice. I had an invitation to go to La Jolla for Thanksgiving with Valerie Henderson's family. And I'd never experienced an American Thanksgiving, so I said yes. And Carl was there, of course. And I can remember.
Huh?
Yeah.
A dostal som pozvánku, že by som mohol ísť do La Jolle na vďaky vzdanie k Valerie Henderson a to bolo pre mňa zaujímavé, lebo som nezažil americké vďaky vzdanie.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's what I'm just remembering what happened at the Thanksgiving.
Spomínam si, čo sa tam
Everybody gave thanks for someone or something this dinner, which is very nice.
So, ďakoval za niečo pri večeri.
I have a funny sense of humor.
A ja mám taký zvláštny zmysel pre humor.
And I said, thank you very much for inviting me here. This is very nice to be amongst, a loving, warm family and blah, blah, blah. And when I go home, I'll tell Her Majesty that the colonies are doing very well. So, too. You know what they did? They all threw bread rolls at me.
Veľmi pekné byť také ešte ďalšie a na konci som povedal, keď sa vrátim domov, poviem jej výsosti, že kolóniám sa darí. Začali po mne hádzať.
I have a question for you ladies, and I say ladies because there are no men in this group. Why is that?
Mám otázku aj pre vás. A,
We have one in this group.
Yeah.
a vlastne
It's
hovorí iba
interesting.
dámy, lebo tu nevidím žiadneho muža, ako je to možné. Máme jedného.
What does the approach mean for you? What does it do for you?
Čo ten prístup znamená pre vás? Čo vám to prináša?
It's not important what I know and what I think that is good for the person.
Že nie je dôležité to, aby ja som vedela, čo je dôležité pre druhého človeka.
I didn't hear the.
Počul som
It is not important what I think that is good or important for that person, for my client. It's important to find what is important for him. So I should center to the client's world, not to my own world and my own knowledge.
Okay.
To dôležité je,
Does it suit your way of being?
že vyhovuje vám to s vašim spôsobom bytia. Áno.
That's the most important thing.
To je to najdôležitejšie.
Because if it doesn't, it's not easy to be congruent if you don't believe what you're doing.
Ak by to tak nebolo, bolo by ľahké byť kongruentným, ak nie je v súlade s tým, čomu verím, ak nerobím niečo, čomu verím.
I once asked Rogers in a very similar group that I was in, and I said to him, okay, we know the three clause conditions. What do you think is the most important?
Ja som sa spýtal Rogersa v skupine, kde ja som bol členom tej skupiny a som sa ho spýtal, dobre, vieme, aké sú tie tri podmienky a ktoré je podľa teba tá
What do you
najdôležitejšia?
think he answered?
Čo myslíte, že čo povedal?
Konkurencia.
Congruence.
Kongruencia.
The most important is for the therapist to be congruent,
Najdôležitejšie pre terapeuta je, aby bol kongruent,
authentic.
autentický.
Does that answer your question?
Je to odpoveď na vašu otázku?
God, I wish my house was as quiet as this.
Tiež by v dome bol tak ticho.
Predsa len ste hovorili, alebo si hovoril, keď že si zavolal toho Rogersa do Anglicka, ale prečo?
So you said you invited Rogers to England, but why?
By that time, I was so, you know what it's like at the beginning when you start learning this, you're so thrilled with it, blah, blah, blah. And that was a stage in my life when it was meaning everything to me.
Viete, aké to je, keď sa začínate učiť ten prístup a spoznávate to, a je to na začiatku a ste taký nadšený, vzrušený a to bol ten bod pre mňa vtedy, že vtedy to pre mňa znamenalo všetko.
And I thought his work could make a very big, major contribution to education, both formal and informal education in England, particularly London.
A myslel som si, veril som, že jeho práca by mohla mať veľmi veľký zásadný príspevok k situácii v školstve, k školstvu a vzdelávaniu v Anglicku a špeciálne teda v Londýne.
And in the long run, it actually did. His presence was so felt. And I read, I can't remember the name of the paper now, but the press wrote, how does this man, who says very little, makes everybody in the room feel important?
Ale vlastne z dlhodobého hľadiska to naozaj aj mal vplyv a dopad.
Precious.
A raz v nejakej tlači napísali, už neviem, ako sa volal ten článok, sa spýtali, ako je možné, že tento muž, ktorý hovorí tak málo, tak dokáže, aby sa ľudia v miestnosti začali cítiť, že sú dôležití.
And this was a hard-nosed journalist.
Toto hard-nosed means
Journalist.
yeah, but hard-nosed means like
Tough.
tough.
Yeah.
A to bol taký ten tvrdý novinár, ktorý toto napísal.
So that's something that he had. If you were in his company, you felt cherished.
To je niečo, čo on mal, že v jeho spoločnosti ste sa cítili fakt cenení, dôležití.
So my wish for all you folks is that you make your clients feel cherished.
Takže moje želanie pre vás všetkých je, aby sa vám darilo tiež vzbudiť tento dojem u vašich klientov.
Because there's no menu.
No menu?
Yes, there's no menu in the therapy. In this therapy, there is no menu.
Nie nejaký
You haven't got a list of do's and don'ts.
Čo sa robí, čo sa nerobí, príručku, ale
You only have you,
máte seba.
and we think it's enough.
A domnievame sa, že to stačí, to je dosť.
If you're immersed in the conditions that we think are important.
Keď ste ukotvení v tých podmienkach, o ktorých si teda
And
myslíme, že sú dôležité.
Those conditions, when you wrap them all up, the most important thing is a quality of presence.
A tie podmienky, keď si ich všetky prečítate, tá najdôležitejšia je kvalita prítomnosti.
Carl once said, this woman said, I saved her life. I didn't do anything.
Karol raz povedal, jedna žena povedala, že som jej zachránil život, ale ja som nič neurobil.
But it seemed that his mere presence was enough to help this young woman.
Ale zdalo sa, že už samotná jeho prítomnosť bola nápomocná k tomu, aby pomohol tej žene.
You can be the greatest therapist in the world with a technique.
Môžete byť najúžasnejší terapeut na svete, čo sa techniky týka.
But if you don't have a quality of presence, it doesn't help the client.
Nemáte
Believe me.
prítomnosti, tak to klientovi nepomôže.
Or if it does, it's very short-lived.
Alebo ak to pomôže, tak je to veľmi také krátkodobé.
So, yeah, I will say this to you. Your tutors should have said it anyway. Listen with your soul, not just with your ears.
Poviem vám toto a pravdepodobne ste to už počuli od
And it's very tiring.
Počúvajte dušou a nie ušami, lebo ušami je to veľmi únavné.
And it should be,
A malo by to byť,
because you're giving you.
lebo dávate seba.
Now I'm talking too much.
Teraz už
I'd
hovorím,
like to hear from you chaps.
Zaujímalo, že či vieš, kde čerpal zdroje alebo takú tú vnútornú motiváciu pre svoju prácu, to vzťahu s tým klientom.
So where do you get resources and motivation for your work, except for the relationship with the client?
That's a good question, and I've not given it enough thought.
Dobrá otázka, ešte som na ňu veľmi neuvažoval.
Really, I haven't. I don't see very few clients now. I just do it to keep my brain active. And
Teraz už mám iba málo klientov, už to robím len, aby som akoby ostal aktívny.
and I neglected that part.
Som zanedbal túto časť.
So much so that when I was in London,
Až na toľko, že keď som bol v Londýne,
it seemed I was working with one woman after another who'd been abused in some way.
a tam som pracoval so ženami, jedna za druhou, ktoré boli nejakým spôsobom zneužité.
And it got to me so much, I went back into therapy
A bolo
for
takto
myself.
že som sám vlastne znova vstúpil do terapie pre seba.
That wasn't easy because I had to find somebody who was as good as me. I meant that, not particularly if it was a person-centered, client-centered therapy.
A myslím to vážne, špeciálne ak to bol niekto teda na klienta alebo na človeka
And
zameraný.
I was actually very lucky at that time that Chuck Devonshire was living in Paris, so I went across to Paris.
Mal som šťastie, že Chuck Devonshire vtedy žil v Paríži, takže som
It
len...
sounds very adventurous, but it's only an hour and a half from London.
Je to veľmi dobrodružné, ale iba pol z Londýna.
And that helped me through that.
Pomohlo preklenúť to obdobie.
Also, my partner helped me very much, who was also a therapist.
Aj partnerka, ktorá je tiež terapeutka.
So yeah, take care of yourself. It's important.
To, čo je dôležité, je postarajte sa o seba.
It's in the beginning of my work, if somebody in a group, for example, was terribly stressed or upset, I used to worry like hell, and I'd call, "Are you okay?" Next day. Rogers, I think I was about 40 or 30 odd then, and Carl said to me, "Do you want to live till you're 50? Be with your client for that hour, be with your group for that couple of hours, then go home and be with something else."
Na začiatku, keď som
Good
začínala,
advice.
niekto v skupine bol veľmi v strese alebo rozrušený, tak vždy som sa tak za nich trápil a potom som im na ďalší deň volal, aby som sa uistil, že či sú v pohode. A Karol mi na to povedal, že chceš sa vôbec dožiť 50-ky takýmto štýlom, že buď s klientom tú hodinku alebo zo pár hodín, ale potom chod domov, buď s niekým iným. Tak.
Pleasure. Robin, you told me you were going to have lots of questions. I said you'd have lots of questions.
Máš nejakú otázku, Láňo?
Do you have a question?
Ja mám otázku.
I do have a question.
Že ste hovorili teda, že tá kongruencia je pre Rogersa bola tým základom. A že ako pracoval, teda či hovoril niekedy o tom, že ako pracoval on s klientom, kde sa sám cítil neisto. Predpokladám, že sa to niekedy stalo.
So you said that Carl said that the basic condition is congruence. Do you know if he said something about how he worked with a client when he felt insecure? I suppose that happened sometime.
When the client feels insecure?
When Carl felt insecure.
Or the therapist?
The therapist. Keď sa ten terapeut cítil.
The therapist feels insecure? I would be very surprised if they were not insecure, particularly at the beginning of careers. And that's not a bad sign. Overconfidence can be very, very dangerous in therapy. Now, the answer to insecurity for me would be you should, and I mean the word should, it's not a word I use very often. You should have a supervisor. Everybody. Doesn't matter who you are. Really.
Je, že by ste mali mať, a malo by sa niečo, to nehovorím často, ale toto tak myslím, mali by ste mať supervíziu všetci.
Not necessarily managerial, of course, but collegiate. Somebody to share with. Am I getting this right? You have people's lives in your hands. Think about it. Am I getting it right? My client's not moving anywhere.
Nemusí to byť nutne supervízor, ktorý je vašim nadriadeným, ale aspoň kolega, aby ste mali s kým si to podiskutovať, popýtať sa, čo sa tam deje, ako tomu rozumiem, je toto správne, nehybeme sa nikam, čo sa tam.
The favorite word is we're stuck.
Najľúbenejší výraz je zasekli sa.
Share that with your supervisor.
Podielte sa o to so svojím
Have
supervízorom.
another ear.
Prizvite nejaké ďalšie ucho, ktoré to môže o tom počuť.
Vitally important. If you're a member of the British Association, you must have a supervisor.
Tak by sme sa pozreli na britskú asociáciu, tam musíte mať povinne supervízora.
It's useful. And it can be a group, it can be 2, 3s and 1s, because it's also good to share.
Je to užitočné, môže to byť skupina, môže to byť dvojice, trojice, to je jedno, ale je dôležité sa podeliť, pozdieľať.
How are we doing for time? We okay?
Poďme na to s časom. V pohode?
So I can give you another piece of advice if you'd like it. I'm going to do it anyway. My wife and I were actually talking about this earlier on, about young people pretty much don't read anymore.
Akorát sme sa o tom rozprávali aj so ženou, že mladí
On
ľudia...
training program, you ask them to read a book.
Nie, na výcviku im poviete, nech prečítajú knižku a oni, že čo?
Well, one of the skills in client-centered therapy or any other kind of therapy is the use of language.
Jedna zo zručností v terapii, v klientom centrovanej terapii alebo aj v inej, je využívanie jazyka.
We tend in our particular way of working use a lot of the metaphor.
V našom prípade, v našej práci využívame veľa metafor.
You find beautiful language written in books.
Môžete v knižkách objaviť
Not textbooks, even novels and
dokonca aj a tak, nemyslím tým teraz iba učebnice.
so it helps to enhance your own powers of vocabulary.
Takže to pomáha, aby ste si obohacovali svoju vlastnú slovnú zásobu.
Mrs. Klein, it seems like you're on a treadmill,
Bo napríklad vy
like a hamster.
zdá sa, ako keby ste boli v takom kolečku, ako
You can read all these things in books.
takéto veci si môžete objaviť v knižke.
I know what it's like. Kids are not reading anymore. Libraries are empty. Very sad.
Knižnice sú prázdne, veľmi smutné.
But to improve your skills, read. That would be my recommendation. I read a book a week because I love reading anyway.
Aby ste si zlepšili svoje zručnosti, tak čítajte. To je moje odporúčanie. Ja čítam jednu knihu za týždeň, ale ja rád čítam aj tak.
Thank you for that.
Ďakujem za otázku.
Bloody, you've never been so quiet before.
Mám jednu otázku. Ja mám takú otázku, že ako vlastne, tak že úplne je zblízka, ale či vôbec si v kontakte s tým, ako sa ten prístup vyvíja, všetky tie types of person-centered nations, čiže všetky tie focusing a EFT a ten rozvoj, ktorý vychádza z Rogersa. Či si s tými, ako sa pozeráš na tie iné prístupy, ktoré čerpajú z toho originálneho kmeňa?
So my question is, how are you in touch, if at all, with all the other approaches that come out of PCA, with how this approach has been developing, all these tribes of centered nation, like focusing, EFT, and all other developing.
That's another interesting question.
Ďalšia zaujímavá otázka.
Yeah. I think I said earlier, when Rogers died, many people were doing all sorts of strange things and adding person-centered on it.
Som to myslím spomínal, že keď Rogers zomrel, tak rôzni ľudia začali robiť rôzne zvláštne veci a dali k tomu nálepku, že je to na človeka.
Now, if we assume they were honest,
by sme predpokladali, že to mysleli úprimne a boli čestní,
then they must have had very little understanding of what person-centered or client-centered therapy was.
Museli mať veľmi málo pochopenie pre to, čo naozaj ten na človeka zameraný prístup, ale
and I think to a certain degree that still goes on.
Myslím, že toto ešte pokračuje trošku, tento trend.
And it's pretty much why I've stuck to my title, client-centered therapist.
A je to tiež dôvod, prečo si svoj titul, že som na klienta zameraný terapeut, lebo to je veľmi jasné.
Now I'll share with you two things. If a client comes to you for counseling or therapy, whatever you want to call it, because I've heard you're a person-centered therapist and I've read all about Carlovi.
A poviem, že prišiel som, lebo viem, že ste na človeka zameraný terapeut a som čítal o Rogersovi.
Oh. And you say, welcome, Mr. or Mrs. Client.
Vy poviete, tak vítajte, pán alebo pani klient.
And they come into your room.
výuka
and you begin in a person-centered way.
začnete na človeka
Right,
zameračným
happy?
spôsobom. Klient je šťastný,
And then you get stuck.
potom sa niekde zase
And then you fall into the trap of going into the bag, the magic hat box, and bringing out something else.
potom sa zaseknete a
Well, tell me about your father.
podľahnete tomu, že začnete do taštičky a vyberiete si nejakú inú vec. Aha,
That kind of thing. That's not an exaggeration, because I've heard it. And what does that do? It makes out that you've lied to your client. You've been false to him or her, and you're not a person-centered therapist at all.
A čo to znamená
You're
vlastne?
eclectic, a bit of this, a bit of that, and like a fruit salad.
Vy ste vlastne klamali tomu klientovi, že vy vôbec nie ste na človeka zameraný terapeut, ale ste eklektický
No,
terapeut.
that's one side.
A je to potom ako šalát.
The other side is don't fall into the trap, okay, of putting on a person-centered straitjacket.
Ďalšia vec je, že nepadnite do pasce toho, že si nasadíte takú na klienta alebo na človeka zameranú kazajku, že sa zväzujete.
And what I mean by that is, if you're, for example, stuck in your work together and you think something might help, share that with the client, why you're doing it, make it an offer, a real offer so that they can refuse, and be very clear, it's got nothing to do with your style of that you work.
A to, čo tým myslím, je, že keď sa zaseknete v nejakej práci s klientom a myslíte si, že niečo iné by mohlo pomôcť, tak mu to povedzte, pozdieľajte to s ním, ako nad tým premýšľate, urobte z toho ponuku, ale naozaj tak, aby to mohol aj odmietnúť. A veľmi jasne povedzte, že to nie je spoločné s tým prístupom, ktorým pracujete.
That way you keep your professional integrity.
Spôsobom si udržíte svoju profesionálnu integritu.
And if it doesn't work, it's probably better to tell the client, we've done the best we can, but I think you would probably be more helpful for you if you worked with a behaviorist or something like that.
A ak vám to nefunguje s tým klientom, môžete mu povedať, tak urobili sme najlepšie, čo sa dalo, ale myslím si, že možno by pre vás bol vhodnejší niekto behavioral.
Because as much as we would like it, the research shows that no therapy is more effective than any other.
Sme boli radi, aby to tak bolo.
That's research.
Nie je úspešnejšia než nejaká iná.
The big difference is the quality of presence of the therapist in whichever orientation you are.
A to, čo robí ten rozdiel medzi tými rôznymi prístupmi, alebo medzi rôznymi terapeutmi, nech už ste z akéhokoľvek prístupu, je tá kvalita prítomnosti.
That makes sense?
Má to zmysel?
Be you.
Buďte sebou.
Best you can offer.
Je to to najlepšie, čo môžete ponúknuť.
Taxi? That's Greek. I lived in Greece for a while. 13 years. What did that mean?
Že hovorí veľa vecí, ktoré sa hovorí. Speak about a lot of things that resonate with me.
Really? You able to share any of them?
Podeliť
You don't have to if you don't want to.
Povedal by som, že takmer všetko. I would say almost everything.
You want to leave it there?
Chcete to tam nechať takto?
Okay.
Okay.
Otázku na Ivana, môžem?
I have a question for Ivan. Can I ask
He
you?
looks like Buddha sitting there.
Mňa zaujíma, že prečo si ho vybral za supervízor.
interested, why did you choose Dave for a supervisor?
Lebo som musel. Čiže stalo sa to tak, že on si vybral teba.
No, it was that he chose you, right? He wanted, yes.
Ale neodmietol si.
You didn't refuse.
Aké máš dôvody? Dá sa, že tu ťa nebudeme tlačiť.
I think fair to say we've known each other for over 40 years.
Je fér povedať, že poznáme sa už vyše 40 rokov.
Mňa tak zaujalo, keď hovoril o tom, že teda Roger bol taký dušou prítomný, až tak oslovil napríklad aj toho novinára, že vlastne dáva tým ľuďom ako keby tú dôstojnosť alebo tú dôležitosť, to je ešte lepšie slovo, a že aký bol súkromný, či to je súkromný, tak to vlastne v tom vzťahu osobnom, priateľskom sa prejavovalo, a keď sa to prejavovalo, tak aké to bolo, že či to robil nejakým gestom, alebo slovom, alebo nejakým svojim vnútorným nastavením na toho človeka. To je pre mňa také celkom zaujímavé na jeho osobnosti.
What sounds interesting to me is how you spoke about Roger's presence and how he also impressed the journalist, for example, and how he makes people feel cherished. So my question is, was he like that also in personal relationships, in friendships? And if yes, then how? Was it some gestures that he did or words that he used, or was it just his inner attitude and setting?
It's an interesting question, that.
About us.
I can tell you this because he told everybody. He had 3 girlfriends. They all knew each other. One was in South Africa, one was in Hampstead in England, and the other one was in New York.
Jednu priateľku mal v Južnej Afrike, druhú v Hampstede v Anglicku a ďalšiu v
This was after Helen died. That was his wife. This is what I meant earlier on when I said, you know, we told him not to keep saying these things. But socially, it's not somebody I would say I'd want to go out and have beer with.
Akoby tak z spoločenského hľadiska to nebol niekto, s kým by som chcel ísť von na pivo.
In a serious situation, he was great company. And even I remember at Thanksgiving, we were playing charades. You know what they are? Yeah. And he was doing all that. But basically, he wasn't a wildly social person. This is my interpretation, and I think it's reasonably accurate.
Keď išlo o nejaké vážne situácie, tak to bolo dobrou spoločnosťou, bolo dobre byť s ním, ale napríklad aj na tom vďaky vzdaní hrali sme šarady a on sa toho zúčastnil, tiež sa hral s nami, ale nebol nejaký akoby šialene spoločenský, takže to je moja interpretácia. Myslím si, že je presne.
Very work orientated.
Veľmi zameraný na prácu.
In fact, I don't remember him stopping really.
Si nepamätám, že by niekedy prestal pracovať.
When he died, I think about 3 or 4 days before, he fell over in the bath and broke his femur. The day after they put it right, he's sitting in bed writing. Absolutely true. And then he got pneumonia, and that was it. So he work orientated the whole pretty time.
Predtým, ako umrel, asi 3-4 dní pred smrťou sa asi v sprche sa pošmykol a zlomil si stehennú kosť. A keď mu to napravili, tak deň potom už písal v posteli. Takže veľmi, veľmi orientovaný na prácu a potom ale dostal zápal pľúc.
The fascinating thing is, though he showed love very much in groups or with clients. He also received a lot of love from a lot of people. He just made you feel that way. Not many men are able to do that. I don't think.
Fascinujúce je, že preukazoval veľa lásky v skupinách klientom, ale aj by dostával veľa lásky naspäť od mnohých ľudí, pretože by sa pri ňom cítili dobre. A to nie je veľa mužov, ľudí dokáže.
I met some of the big shots. I knew, what's his name, the focusing guy, Gene Gendlin. I met him in America. Jerry Bozart, I knew very well, as you knew him as well. I met, Lang in London. I was with Rogers then. All of these big shots I respected very, very much. Rogers I loved.
A poznal som aj tie ďalšie veľké mená. Stretol som sa aj s tým chlapikom, čo s Gendlinom, aj s Jerry Bozarom, aj s Langom. Toho som stretol v Londýne, keď som tam bol s Rogersom. A týchto všetkých mužov som rešpektoval, ale Rogersa som naozaj mal rád.
Okay. Please, more questions. I'm getting...
Pýtajte sa.
Myslíte, že by povedal Rogers, keby teraz prišiel, že ako ten smer, kam sa dostal, odkedy...
What do you think Rogers would say if he could come in today and see how the approach has developed?
Wow, where'd that come? I can only talk from experience rather than, you never know what somebody thinks.
Môžem rozprávať bez toho, ako mám skúsenosť.
He would have done pretty much similar to me. He wouldn't have talked so much, that's for sure. He'd have said good evening, everybody, and he'd have sat down. And then he'd twig something, a little bit like our friend spoke there before, and he'd home on that right away. It's, or even if they didn't say anything, I've heard him say, for example, in a group, I don't know what's going on for you, but something is right now. He'd feel it.
A môžem teda hovoriť bez skúsenosti s ním a on to mal tak nejak podobne ako ja. Určite nerozprával toľko a napríklad, keď prišiel, povedal dobrý večer, on sa sadol, ale napríklad, keď sa niečo udialo, vedel to tak nejak zachytiť, vycítiť, napríklad ako to, keď som počul oddychnutie, tak vedel, že niečo sa deje a povedal napríklad, neviem, čo sa presne deje, ale niečo sa deje, niečo som zachytil, cítil.
We were in a group one time and nobody said anything.
Teraz v skupine nikto nič nehovoril.
Carl got up and left.
Tak Karol vstal a odišiel.
If you don't want to work, what's the point? That was his thing.
To bol jeho postoj.
Does that answer your question?
To odpoveď na vašu otázku?
Neviem, či sa dá úplne akože odpovedať na moju otázku.
I don't know if my question can be answered.
Yeah, you really can't really, can it?
Asi nie.
He would behave differently to me, that's for sure. He would not speak so much, he never did. But he responded more than that.
Asi by sa správal trochu inak než ja, určite by toľko nerozprával, ale tak inak reagoval.
Yeah, it depends what the group was for, of course. It's very difficult question to answer.
Existuje preložený článok, ktorý je v našom newsletteri. Keby fiktívny rozhovor s Carlom Rogersom o tom, ako vníma vlastne vývin PCA po jeho smrti. Vyšiel v časopise PCA, že niečo.
There is a translated article in our newsletter, which is a fictional interview with Carl Rogers about his views of how today's PCA looks like, and I think it was published in PCA journal.
I'd love to see it.
To by som si rád pozrela.
God knows what he'd think.
Boh vie, čo si on
To je tak 10 rokov dozadu, takže ja si to už nepamätám ani tých autorov, ktorí to napísali.
This article is, I think, like 10 years old. I don't remember really who
Yes.
wrote.
I can be sure of one thing.
Now, som si
He
istý,
wouldn't like Trump. I'm absolutely sure. Like he didn't like Nixon.
Ja ešte rozmýšľam nad takou, že tá súčasná aj knihy, aj publikácie, ktoré vychádzajú v PCC Books, sú hodne o takej citlivosti k odlišnosti, k kultúram, k queer komunite, že odkiaľ to ide táto citlivosť v Británii a v tom prístupe obsiahnutá, či to má niekde korene, alebo...
I'm thinking about the books that are published now, and they are all about, or a lot about the sensitivity to differences, to culture, to queer community or people. And I'm wondering, where does this come from in Britain, in this approach?
Very much PCC Books publisher is there are a lot of books about person-centered approach and diversity and
Yeah. I worked in London, so I can only refer what it's be like there.
Ja pracujem v Londýne, takže môžem nejak povedať iba o tom, že ako to vnímam tam.
And London, of course, is multicultural city by
Je to multikulturálne mesto.
and I learned very quickly that I had to learn and respect the culture of the person I was dealing with, that was a client.
Ja som si veľmi rýchlo som sa naučil, že musím spoznať a rešpektovať tú kultúru toho človeka, s ktorým sedím, s tým klientom.
It didn't change my approach at all.
Môj prístup to vôbec
But it
nejak
did,
nezmenilo.
make me think very carefully about the language I use
Ale veľmi
with different cultures. And also learn a language very often, particularly Afro-Caribbeans. They speak, some of them speak in a kind of patois. So I had to learn some of that stuff if I was to be effective.
So that's a different language.
But I was very careful not to change who I was and the way I worked. It would have been phony. But it's extremely, this culture is very different to British culture here. So I had to learn that very quickly. And my wife will probably tell me I have never learned.
Takže som taký opatrnejší v tom jazyku a niekedy to znamená aj naučiť jazyk. Ak mám klientov, ktorí používajú špecifický jazyk, niekedy sa potrebujem naučiť aj niektoré tých výrazy, ale vždy si dávam pozor na to, aby sa nezmenilo pri tom, kto som a akým spôsobom pracujem, lebo to by bolo také falošné. A aj tu táto kultúra je veľmi odlišná a musel som sa naučiť, ale moja žena by napríklad povedala, že nikdy som sa to úplne nenaučil sa jazyk.
Yeah, and I also had to understand cultures in the sense of in a lot of Indians where I lived, and big brothers, would be finding husbands for their sisters. This I found very strange, but I had to respect him. You're not going to change 10,000 years of culture. And why would I want to anyway? It works for them.
A ďalšia vec je pochopiť tú danú kultúru v tom ich nejakom zmysle. Tam, kde ja pracujem, tak žije veľa ľudí akoby z Indie a tam je napríklad zvykom, že starší bratia vlastne im hľadajú alebo áno, nájdu muža pre svoje mladšie sestry. Zvláštne, ale nejakých 10 000 rokov ich tradície.
And I think you have it here too. I found a very different culture when I worked in Moravia to people in Prague. Very different.
Je to aj tu veľmi
I know why you're nodding. And probably you do here from people who come live in the east and people live in Bratislava.
Máte asi tiež čo sú Bratislava.
Don't change your way of being, but respect the culture that you're dealing with.
Nezmeňte
You have no right to want to change it.
Nezmeňte svoj spôsob bytia, ale rešpektujte tú kultúru, s ktorou pracujete, alebo toho človeka, s ktorým pracujete. Nemáte právo na to meniť.
Is that fair enough? Yeah.
Yeah.
I see you laughing a lot over there.
Vidím, že sa
Teda počujem tom, čo hovoríte, vláda. Že veľa vládov hovorí veci, ktoré hovoríte vy, tak už viem, že to
are saying I hear a lot of Vlado. There are many of the things that Vlado tells us. So I know now where that comes from.
Am I getting it right?
A je to správne, hovorím to správne.
Ja hovorím, čo hovorím. Ale my...
Ale ten smer je
Ja mám úplne iný. Na Slovensku považujú za Rogeriana a dokonca ma, keď sa majú zapisovať ľudia do zoznamu psychoterapeutov, tak mi si to Rogerian, teda ako z nejakého dôvodu to nejakí ľudia si myslia.
Áno, ti pripísam.
Very different background.
Myslím, že niečo podobné.
Who was that? Who said that?
Yeah, Vlado is saying.
Oh, Vlado.
Maybe I'm similar.
Ale ak to bol aj kompliment, tak vďaka.
Neviem, že či to niekto z vás víme, ale veľa proste takých vecí, že aj byť citlivý na tú kultúru, byť fakt, že s tým klientom. To sú veci, ktoré tu rok hovoríš. Najdôležitejšie je vlastne s tým klientom.
Yeah, but these are many things that you, Vlado, say about being sensitive to the culture, about being with the client, but this is the most important.
No, máme spoločné.
That's what we have in common.
Good. Interested you said Roger. We were in a group one time and we were supposed to do this kind of thing with an interview. And they made a mess with this. And Roger's got a bit angry with it. When's this thing going to start? It just was not like him. And I said, you know what, Carl, I think I'm more person-centered than you are. He said, yeah, I think you are, Dave. But I'm more Rogerian. It's kind of happy remembrances.
Kedy to už končilo dosť a ani nebolo, akoby nebol úplne vo svojej koži a ja hovorím, že počúvaj, ja som tuším viac na človeka zameraný ako ty. A hovorí, áno, to je pravda, si, ale ja som viac Rogerian.
Ja vieš, čo zaujímalo? Či bola niekedy mňa by zaujímalo, čo len kedy nejaká situácia alebo klient, keď si pochyboval.
I'm interested, was there or has there been any situation or client in your experience when you doubted this approach?
Yes. Yes, there was. It's important I get this right. A young man who was constantly in trouble with the police.
Dôležité, aby som to povedal správne. Bol jeden mladý muž, ktorý stále mal problémy s políciou.
And to save himself going to prison, his social worker arranged with the court if he had therapy and it worked, blah, 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 would he get off?
Aby teda nešiel do väzenia, tak jeho sociálny pracovník to zariadil tak, že že mu vybavil, že ak by teda chodil do terapie, ak terapia by bola úspešná, tak nemusí ísť do väzenia.
And the social worker contacted me.
A ten sociálny pracovník sa obratil na mňa.
Now, this young man was what we call a flasher. Do you know that expression?
Oh, like exposing him in public?
Yeah. And he'd been caught so many times. So he came in my office and the social worker said, "Can I be there?"
Takže prišiel ku mne a
And then normally I would say, "Not a chance, no way."
ten sociálny pracovník spýtal, či tam tiež môže byť a za bežných okolností by som povedal, že v žiadnom prípade určite.
But he's asked if I would make an exception because he has to also put in a report, blah, blah, blah.
Spýtal sa ma, či ale môžem urobiť teraz výnimku, lebo ono tam musí tiež spísať záznam a blah, blah, blah.
And I said, if the client agrees, I won't have a problem.
Ja som povedal, že ak s tým bude teda súhlasiť ten klient, tak dobre.
Client says no, it's no.
Ale ak klient povie nie, tak...
But he agreed.
Súhlasím.
He came in, we began.
Prišiel, začali sme.
Very welcoming. Didn't judge him in any way for his behavior. Blah, blah, blah.
Som veľmi taký privetivý.
And I was as empathic as I possibly could be.
Myslím, že som bol tak empatický, ako som len bol schopný byť.
Because everybody deserves the same, whether they're criminal or not.
Každý si zaslúži ten istý
At
prístup,
least that much.
je nejaký zločinec alebo nie. Aspoň ten základ.
After 5 minutes, he said, "Can I go?" To his social worker, not to me. "Can we go now?"
V 5 minútach sa spýtal,
Social worker said, "No, you know why you're here.
If
you leave, you've had it."
A on hovorí, nie, veď vieš prečo si
So on we went. I was very careful again, didn't judge him. I was very clear. I don't approve of your behavior, but you have a right to be heard, so on. Blah, blah, blah. All the things you would expect a therapist to say. Another 10 minutes. Can we go now?
Povedal som jasne, že nespravil, čo urobil, ale že má teda právo byť vypočutý a že mu dávam ten priestor a po 5 minútach znova povedal, tak už môžem ísť.
And this went on. He didn't receive anything.
Nebol schopný prijať.
And he left with his social worker.
A odišiel aj s tým sociálnym pracovníkom.
And I sat in my office after that thinking, where did I go wrong? Well, I must have done or said something wrong. And I couldn't work it out. Usually I can work it out if it doesn't. No, I would do exactly the same again. Blah, blah, blah.
A som sedel vo svojej pracovni a rozmýšľal som, kde som urobil chybu, čo som spravil zle, lebo musel som niečo urobiť zle a väčšinou, keď sa takto akoby spätne zamyslím, tak viem v tom nájsť, že kde bola chyba, ale nie, prechádzal som si to, spravil by som to úplne rovnako.
So I made a note, must check this with my supervisor.
Tak som si urobil poznámku, že musím si toto prejsť so supervizorom.
And we looked at it. He said, "Can you tell me almost verbatim, Dave, what you said?" And I did, and we looked at it, and right at the end of about an hour of supervision, we came to a conclusion. Here was a young man who'd been shouted at, screamed at, beaten up for his flashing business, threatened by the police, God knows who else. And along comes this guy who's empathic with him. And my supervisor said he couldn't stand it.
A ja som to teda zobral do supervízie.
So that was the time it didn't Well, probably there were other times, I'm sure.
Či
But
mu to
that was the obvious.
No, tak ja som a asi po hodine supervízie sme vlastne prišli spolu k záveru, že bol tu vlastne tento mladý muž, na ktorého doteraz všetci kričali a zjapali a zbili ho a možno sa mu nejak vyhrážali za to, čo robil, nejak ho stíhali. A teraz tu príde nejaký chlapík, ktorý má k nemu empatiu, že on to pravdepodobne vôbec nemohol unieť, nemohol ustať. Takže toto bol jeden z tých prípadov, kedy...
No, and I think well, it didn't work, but I think I had a quality of presence which was okay, pretty good.
Ono to síce nefungovalo, myslím,
But
že
it didn't work. And I
kvalita prítomnosti...
smashing myself on the head why. He wasn't used to anybody listening to him.
Proste to nefungovalo. Ja
I'm
som
not judging him.
že ako to,
And he
ale
couldn't stand it. Well, that's the conclusion that my supervisor and I came to.
Aspoň ten záver, ku ktorému sme prišli, ja so
It's so important you have supervisor. It can be a member of your own group. It doesn't have to be somebody up there and you down there. Be collegiate and that way you'll do better for your clients. Are you leaving us?
Nothing wrong, but I really need to go. I'm so tired, but I was very, very nice.
Nice to meet you and thank you for your questions. Bye-bye.
No, tak ale zase však blížime sa ku koncu všetci, nie?
Možno mala ešte otázku ku koncu. V podstate veľa tu bolo také povedané, čo sa mi teda viacerými zarezonovalo, že také veľmi hlboké myšlienky a že čo by ste možno vy chceli a možno aj počuť, keď ste začínali a čo by ste možno chceli aj vy odovzdať tým začínajúcim psychologom, poradcom i čo považujete za také dôležité.
So my question is, because you have been speaking about very important things that resonated with a lot of us, and my question is, what would you have liked to hear when you were in your beginnings of therapeutic practice? And also maybe what would you like to say to those who are beginning now?
Oh, wow. I think both the same things.
Na obidve je rovnaká odpoveď.
What I have to say to people now,
Som dnes povedal ľuďom,
I think I said it slightly earlier, a little earlier.
myslím, že už som to pred chvíľkou povedal.
Listen with your soul,
Počúvajte
not
dušou,
just your ears,
nielen ušami.
and practice listening with your soul.
Trénujte to počúvanie dušou.
That's the shortest thing that I can say.
To je to najkratšie, čo na to viem povedať.
And be you. Don't try to be Carl Rogers or anybody else. I fell into that trap earlier on. I wanted to copy Carl Rogers. Then I realized, I was enough for myself. I didn't have to copy God,
Snažte sa byť niekto iný, nesnažte sa kopírovať.
Don't copy anyone. Create your own style. And don't fall into the trap of magic boxes when it doesn't work. Think it through. What could I have done differently? And so on. But the main thing is listen with all of you. Not many husbands listen to their wives like that. That's why we have couples therapy a lot. And perhaps vice versa too. And ask yourself right now, does my partner listen to me for 1 hour a week? Without any interruptions or anything else? I won't ask you for the answer, but think for yourself. I don't listen to my wife once an hour a week. And I'm damn sure she doesn't listen to me.
Môžete sa sami seba spýtať, či váš partner vás počúva hodinu.
We have what we have and we know that, so we don't.
Môžete si robiť pre seba a ja napríklad nepočujem asi hodinu bez prerušenia svojho manželku raz týždeň a učiteľná.
So, what a privilege this person has, this client, who's been heard for a whole hour once or, and when I have a client, it's an hour. None of this 50-minute stuff. But that's me.
Čiže aké je to privilegium pre toho, že
God, it's a luxury, isn't it?
mňa to podivuje.
It's a luxury. So that would be my closing bit. Listen with your soul.
To by bola moja veta na záver. Počúvajte dušou.
And you are in a very privileged position as a therapist. People share with me that they share with no one the whole of their lives. Their lovers, their partners, or maybe their hairdressers, but no related.
Možno svojim kaderičkom, ale inak.
So people ask me what I get from this.
Ja sa ma pýtajú, čo z toho ja mám, čo z toho dostávam.
What I get is the privilege of entering into people's lives at a very deep level, if I'm lucky.
To, čo ja odpoviem, je, že to, čo z toho mám, je, že môžem vstúpiť do životov ľudí na veľmi hlbokej úrovni.
And I keep that precious.
A to považujem za veľmi cenné.
So whatever anyone shares with you, keep it precious.
Že nech sa mi už ktokoľvek pozdieľa čokoľvek, tak akoby strážte to ako veľmi cenné.
So Vlado, Ivan, Irina, and you and everybody, thank you for listening to me. It's a long time since I've been able to share some of this stuff, and
Všetci ostatní, ďakujem.
I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you so much. And I wish you the best in your personal and professional lives forevermore. Thanks, Ivan.
Ďakujeme.